Okay everyone, so I am going to go ahead and show you how to make some homemade baby food. I have a 9-month-old at home. He has a couple of teeth, so I don't have to puree his food any longer. However, I do make sure that I still give him soft foods. He only has 2 teeth, so I still give him soft foods that he can easily chew, or foods that can just be mashed with a fork. I used to use a blender and puree his food, but we're past that stage, so now we're moving on to a little bit more solidified foods, a little bit more small chunks that can easily be smashed with his gums. So what we're going to go ahead and make is some sweet potatoes. So I have 2 sweet potatoes here, and we are going to actually make these sweet potatoes in the oven. I'm gonna bake them, and then we're gonna add some fresh smashed banana to them, along with some mango and some fresh ginger root. So the reason why I'm adding the mango and the ginger root is because there's some really good antioxidants in the ginger root and some really good vitamins in this mango, along with the potassium in the banana, that's going to help him right now. He does have a little bit of a cold, so we want to make sure that we're strengthening his immune system. So the way to do that is by adding some bright fruits to his food, along with a little bit of spices such as ginger, and then some potassium. So I'm going to add that. In addition, he's going to have dessert. His dessert is just fruit. I wish I loved fruit to the point of where it could just be my dessert. I love fruit, but not just for dessert, unless it's like a strawberry shortcake or something like that. But we're gonna scoop out the seeds, and we're going to just chop these in small little chunks. This is ripe enough to where it's very soft, so that he'll be able to chew these just fine without me having to puree it. And then in addition to that, he's also going to have some salmon, some fresh salmon, and we're gonna season that up and bake it as well. I'll show you how we season that up. And then he's going to have some sauteed spinach, some fresh greens. These again are going to help with his cold. Anything fruits and veggies wise are going to be amazing for his immune system. So we want to make sure we're building that up so we can get him past this stage, so it doesn't turn into like a sinus infection or anything like that. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start with the sweet potatoes, because those are going to take the longest. So I've already washed these. You're going to make sure you want to scrub them really well. They do. So I have some square sheets here. We're going to wrap them in foil, and we're going to drizzle a little bit of olive oil on them, and that's just to keep the skin moist. It's not really for flavor, because baby is not going to get the skin at all, but it does help with maintaining that moisture so that they don't dry out in the oven. So literally just a tiny drizzle. Use your hands just to get that olive oil rubbed all around the skin. Then you're gonna wrap it, and just like that, super easy. We are gonna wanna make sure we poke some holes into this sweet potato, because we don't want it to explode in the oven. So I have a fork here. So easy just to grab a fork. So 2 things, I just put olive oil all over my hands, so I want to make sure that the fork isn't slipping out of my hands, because I don't want to stab myself. But then in addition to that, the potato can slip out of my hand too. So if you use a long enough kitchen cloth, then you can hold the fork with one end with the kitchen cloth, hold the potato with the other end, and you can easily stab. Just a few holes. I'm gonna bake these in the oven at 400 degrees for about 45 minutes to an hour, just depending on how large your potatoes are. It's good at about maybe 40 minutes to test them by just poking a fork in them. If the fork goes all the way through, then your potatoes are done. If it's kind of a little firm to get the fork in, then you're gonna wanna cook it a little bit longer. So poke your holes. All right. And all I do is I just put these on actually like a little round cake pan, since I only have two. You can put them directly on your racks, but because I use olive oil and I poked holes, I noticed that the olive oil will tend to seep a little bit out of the holes and then gets all over my oven. And I hate that because I don't want to have to clean it up in the oven for about 45 minutes. While those are baking, we're going to go ahead and prepare our fish. Our fish is going to go in the oven with the potatoes because it's just, I'm multitasking, it's a whole lot easier. Sometimes I like to, most of the time I actually like to bake my salmon on 375 because that lower heat does ensure that you don't dry out your fish. And I also like my salmon medium because I like it to be really moist and not super dry, super flaky. However, for babies, we want to make sure this is well done. So I'm going to go ahead and put the salmon in with the potatoes at 400 degrees because I need it to cook all the way through anyways. It's only going to take about 8 minutes in the oven, so it's no problem to have that 25-degree difference for him. So let's go ahead and season. Now, I know many of you are going to be like, why is she adding seasoning and spices to her baby's food? Because babies like flavor too. You don't have to feed your child bland food. You can definitely spice it up. You can definitely season their food. A lot of these spices and seasonings are actually good for their bodies, so it's great to do it. The only thing that I wouldn't do is season their foods during the first, stage of introducing them to solid food. Reason being is you're still testing out their allergies. You're making sure that they're okay with certain foods, and so you don't want to add spices and seasonings on top of a new food and then you don't know what upset them. So between that 4 to 6 month stage in life, when you first start introducing them to foods, you are going to probably give them foods more on the bland end. So for example, when I first introduced salmon to my son, it was literally just a piece of salmon, no seasoning. I did drizzle a tiny bit of olive oil on it because he had already been introduced to olive oil, but other than that, this is all he got. And then once we started introducing more foods to him and I realized that he didn't have any allergies, then we went ahead and started seasoning everything. So he's 9 months old now. We're at that stage where we can test out seasonings with him and spices with him. I do like to stick to herbs, dried or fresh, because those tend to be a lot healthier for him. But I do use a tiny bit of salt. Very rare, but I do use it, and it's not regular salt. It's going to be Himalayan sea salt, pink sea salt. And it's the tiniest bit, and it's just to give it a little bit of some flavor, a little bit more flavor, but not enough for it to be high in sodium or to negatively impact him. And again, it's going to be sea salt and Himalayan pink sea salt at that. So let's go ahead and season that. So I'm going to go ahead and do a tiny bit, again, a tiny bit of salt. Kids don't need salt. Adults don't really need salt. However, it does taste good, but you don't want to use too much of it. If you're responsible with it, they'll be just fine. So it's not coming out. All right, so that's literally all he gets. Just a tiny bit, just a few cranks there, and then a little bit of garlic powder. And then these are going to be the dried herbs that I use of choice. So some oregano and some thyme. Very safe. You're gonna wanna make sure that whatever you're giving your baby is safe. A simple internet search will let you know. Trust me, there's thousands of articles out there about what to do and what not to do. But if you have any concerns, always ask your pediatrician, of course, or a nutritionist. So I'm gonna go ahead and sprinkle a little bit of thyme. So there are some really good fatty acids in salmon that are great for brain development for your child. So the sooner that you're able to introduce them to fish and seafood, the better, especially salmon. So I started introducing salmon to him probably at about 6 months, because he started eating solid foods at 4 months. He did have some acid reflux issues, so we had to start introducing some solid foods to him a lot sooner than I would have liked to. However, it actually ended up being great, because now I'm able to introduce him to all kinds of different varieties of foods, and he's only 9 months old, so I can only imagine by the time he turns 1 what he's going to love. And he does not turn down food. He actually pretty much likes almost everything that I give him. At first he hated bananas, and now he loves them. And he actually really likes ginger. He likes a lot of the spices that I've introduced to him so far. So I'm gonna keep doing that. So oregano, we're gonna go ahead and season the salmon with some oregano. Again, just a little bit, they don't need a whole lot. And then I'm going to drizzle with a little bit of olive oil just to keep that moisture in there. Because again, he only has a couple of teeth. So I want to make sure that I maintain as much moisture as possible in his food, so that when he's chewing it with his gums or with the 2 little teeth that he has, that it's able to break up easily and he doesn't choke or it doesn't get stuck in the back of his throat. So we want to make sure we keep our fish well done but still moist. And so, as you may know, salmon is really hard to get well done without drying out. So drizzle a little bit of olive oil on there, and that will help. What's also going to help is when you put it in the oven for the first maybe 6 to 8 minutes while it's in the oven, you're going to want to let it cook, and then you're going to pull it out of the oven and you're going to break it up just a little bit with a fork. It'll flake really easily, and then you're going to want to cook it for just maybe 1 minute to 2 minutes longer, just to ensure that it's cooked all the way through. And then you can pull it out. You'll know that it's cooked all the way through and you didn't dry out your fish. If you break it up and then leave it in the oven for too long after that, it will dry out. So we're going to go ahead and get started with mashing our banana, and then we're going to go ahead and cut up the mango. So now the mango, this is not as ripe as I would like it to be. So this we are going to have to puree just so it has the right consistency when we do add it to the sweet potato. So I will break out my food processor just for that portion of it. And as a matter of fact, to make it easier, so the banana, you can mash it with a fork. But since I'm already pulling out the food processor for the mango, I'm gonna go ahead and add the banana in with that. The banana. Just chop it into chunks. Put it in our food processor. I'm gonna do 2 bananas. We have 2 sweet potatoes, and we are going to add 2 bananas. Get some of those banana strings. All right. And then the mango. So you want to cut as close to that seed as possible. So see, I even cut so close that I cut some of the seed off, because I want to use up as much mango as possible and not leave so much of the pulp attached to the seed. So get as close to that skin as you can, and then that little bit that I did get on, cut through, you can just pull it out just like that. Okay, and then you're gonna want to take the skin off. Make sure you don't get any of the skin in the food processor, because trust me guys, I've accidentally got some skin in there and it does not puree. So you don't want to have any of that skin in the food, because it is hard for the babies to digest. All right, so you're gonna want to chop these into little chunks so it can go in the food processor. And then this is the part of the mango that's like the worst, because you're trying to just scrape whatever little bit of pulp left off of it, And so you just kind of just want to just randomly cut pieces that are soft and aren't a part of the seed or a part of the skin, and just get as much of it off of there as you can. I'm sure there's a trick that I am unaware of. If you know what that trick is, please let me know, because this is how I've been doing it, because I have no idea. All right, just get as much of that skin as you can. I think I've gotten a good amount. I'm only going to use one mango, and the reason why is because mango, it has a very powerful taste to it, and I don't want it to overpower the dish. So one is enough, and it has plenty of the nutrients that I need in that one mango to suffice. So, all right, so we're gonna go ahead and add this to our food processor. Ginger is extremely powerful. You do not want to overpower your kid with ginger. It can be a little spicy if you put too much, but if you put the right amount, it adds the best flavor ever. So just a tiny bit. So I call these little fingers. So I'm just gonna find the one that's really small, and I'm not even gonna use all of this, but I'm gonna use this small one. If you take a spoon, you can easily get the skin off by just scraping it, and it peels really easily. So that's one way to do it. So see how it comes off really easily, just like that. Or you can use like a potato peeler, but when you're dealing with like a super small piece like this, you don't want to cut your fingers on a potato peeler. So I just get enough skin off for the amount that I'm gonna need. It's not even gonna be this whole piece, so I don't even have to get all the skin off of this whole piece, but just enough. And then, all right, so that should be good. Then I'm gonna use a grater, and I'm gonna grate directly into the food processor. So I have a grater here, or a zester, and just a little bit, so. And the reason why I'm using a zester is because I don't want to trust that the food processor is going to break this down in chunks small enough for my child to not be eating like big chunks of ginger. So that should be enough. Just a tiny bit. All right, and then if you want to add a little bit of purified water, just to help with the blending a little bit. Mango does have quite a bit of juice, so you don't want to add too much water because you don't want it to be soupy. The mango will produce enough water to get a good consistency, but like I mentioned before, this mango wasn't as ripe as I would like. It's ripe, but it wasn't as ripe as I usually use them, so I am going to add just a tad bit of water. If you can see, this is the consistency. It is a little bit soupy. However, keep in mind the sweet potatoes are really thick, so when I add the sweet potatoes to this mango, banana, and ginger mixture, it will thicken up to the right consistency that I'm looking for. This is what they look like. If you let them sit in the foil for about maybe 10 minutes, it does help with getting the skin off of them. So you just want to open them up. Be careful because they will be hot. So obviously, you're going to want to allow for that extra 10 minutes of them sitting so that you can handle them pretty easily. But I just cut them in half. Again, they will be hot, especially when you cut them in half. And when you do that, you can just pinch the skin and it just peels right off. Very easy to do. I just pinch the skin and it peels right. Okay, so do the same. I normally like to do my prepping for him on the weekend, on Sundays, Saturdays, or Sundays, because then I'll have his food for the week, because obviously the week is really busy for me, so I don't have time to always cook his food. He is eating a lot of the same foods that we eat nowadays, so sometimes I don't even have to give him, you know, prepared foods that I prepared earlier in the week, but sometimes I do. Sometimes I want to eat something spicy, or like for example, for dinner tonight, we're gonna actually have some shrimp tacos. So because of that, I don't want to, you know, obviously I can't give him that. So I want to make sure I have another option for him other than jarred food, where he's still getting fresh food. You know, if I'm eating fresh food, I would like for him to be eating fresh food as well. So sometimes you have the time, great. If not, I mean, some people, you know, don't have the time, and it's completely understandable, and you have to give your baby a jar of food. I do it from time to time. If I didn't have time to make his food, then, you know, he does get jar food every once in a while. But I try my best to give him whole foods, foods that were either in the produce aisle or in the refrigerated section. Every now and again he'll get, you know, something processed, but for the most part I try to give him whole food. Okay, so because I added that ginger in here, I kind of wanted to add a little bit more of a kick. That kind of reminds me of fall a little bit. We're getting into the fall months, and again, babies can definitely have spices, so we can kick it up just a little bit more. So this is the consistency once I added the sweet potatoes and blended it. If you notice, there's a little bit of mango skin in there, but we'll get that out when we put it into little containers. But I'm going to add a tiny bit of allspice. So allspice is extremely powerful. So we just want a dash of it in there just to add a little bit extra kick. I'll blend it for like 5 seconds. Again, if I can eat it, baby will eat it. If you do find that your food processor didn't puree everything as much as you want and you have little small chunks, again, if your child is a 9-month-old like mine with a couple of teeth, it's perfectly okay. They will get through those small little bits. Don't worry about it. If your baby is 4 months old or 5 months old or even 6 months old and not yet, you know, doesn't yet have teeth, add water. Add a little bit of water, purified water, and that will help get it to the right consistency and break down those little bits. In addition, if you want to add a tiny bit of olive oil just to get it really more, you know, a little bit more smooth, then you can do that. But honestly, the banana in this will help kind of give it that creamy, smooth texture that you're looking for. So we're going to set this aside. This is going to go in our little containers so that we can layer our food. So I like to layer whatever he's having in 4-ounce containers, because he only gets 4 ounces of food at a time right now, because he is still on the bottle. So I'll show you how I layer that in just a second. But next up, we're gonna go ahead and cook down our spinach. Okay, so I am warming a skillet on the stove at about medium-high heat. I'm going to wait for the pan to get warm, and then I'm going to drizzle just a tiny bit of olive oil, probably about half a tablespoon of olive oil in my pan. I'm gonna let that warm just a little bit, and then we're gonna go ahead and add the spinach. Give it a rough chop, and I don't know if you can see, but now you have like little pieces of spinach, and that's all you want for them. Like, he'll be able to handle that just fine. All right, so we're gonna put that to the side. All right, so here's the salmon. So this was the salmon that I had prepared earlier, and I flaked it, We're not gonna give them the skin, but it comes right off of the skin. But see how easily this flakes up? So when you have a little baby, you want it to be almost like tuna. You know when you make tuna salad, how you get that flaky tuna? That's the same consistency that you want. So now we have our salmon, we have our sweet potatoes, and we have our spinach. So I'm gonna go ahead and prepare a container of food so you can see what it looks like layered. And then I'll just chop this up and put it in separate containers for him. This is cantaloupe. I'm not gonna put that on video because it's just chopped cantaloupe. I'm not doing anything fancy with it. And I'll put those in separate containers and store it in the fridge, so then that way he'll have his meal and his dessert or his snack for later. So I'll go ahead and prepare one so you can see what that looks like. So I do a little bit of the potato mixture. I just put about a third, maybe a tiny bit more than a third, but that's going to be my base. And you can use these little measuring sides. It has the measurements here. So this looks like it's about 1.5 ounces of potato mixture. Then I'm going to add my spinach mixture. So just a little bit, layer that on top. Just like that. So this, you're not gonna wanna put too much because again, when you chop it up and you mush it down, it's quite a bit of spinach in there. It just looks like it's not a whole lot because it's cooked down and it's wilted. But just put a little bit in there. And then this is where you put your salmon, and I'm only gonna do enough to just kind of almost like you're just sprinkling it over the top of your container. Because again, he doesn't eat a lot. He doesn't need a whole lot. So just enough, just to give him a nice little well-balanced meal there. So there you go. How cute is that? So you can see your layers. So you have your potato, mango, banana mixture, your greens, and your salmon on top. Airtight lid. You can pop them in the refrigerator if they're going to be eaten within 2 or 3 days. If it's going to be, you know, a little bit longer before you can get to them, make sure you freeze them, because anything longer than 2 or 3 days in the fridge, I would not give to my child. If it's salmon, honestly, 2 days max, and that's it. So I'm going to put a couple in the fridge, and then I'm going to put the rest in the freezer. For now, this is it.